This is interesting to me. I mean, it's kind of what we talk about in theory a lot when it comes to gun control, that the reason we have the Second Amendment in this country isn't just because of personal self-defense. It's useful for personal self-defense, but the reason is to protect against a tyrannical government. What's happened in Venezuela, it's playing out exactly as we theorize will happen if we enact gun control here in the United States.
I mean, isn't this like a perfect case study for the reason why we have the Second Amendment? It isn't just for hunting. It isn't just for self-defense. It's to remind the government who is the sovereign. And here in the United States, it's the people. And the Second Amendment is the most salient reminder to the government. And you see this in Venezuela now. You know, the incumbency there, Maduro and the socialist communist government, their only option is to quell the opposition. And if the opposition's unarmed, it's much easier for them to stay in power. And look, this is a lawless regime. You know, they take businesses from people, they take property. Should it be really any surprise that they're going to go around and take guns? I don't think this is any surprise. I don't know how much the people supported it. I don't know how much they have a say in their own government. It's very little, if any. It only adds up to how strong the opposition is, and we see what they're doing to the opposition.
Right. Well, I think it was since just in the last couple of years, since April, actually in the last year, since April of 2017, almost 200 pro-democracy dissidents, they're people who are criticizing the socialist government in Venezuela, have been shot. They've been killed, murdered by the Venezuelan government, and they had no means to protect themselves. All they had were rocks because the government came around and took their guns. Now, remember too, in Australia, when liberals tell us, you know, well, why don't you just try an Australian type gun buyback program where people voluntarily turn in their guns and the government pays them? That's a bunch of baloney. It's just straight up boo hockey. It's ridiculous because people don't want to do that. And when you don't voluntarily turn over your guns, the government takes them at the point of the government gun. That's what happened here. Only 37 recorded voluntary gun surrenders happened after this law in Venezuela. More than 12,500 were by force.
Right, and what they did with those 12,500 was give it to the secret police force that goes around and browbeats people and kills the opposition. I mean, so this is precisely an interesting case study in why we have the Second Amendment. Crime is rampant in the country. Another interesting statistic is that after they took the guns, after they confiscated weapons, crime actually increased because you have the opposition. They're trying to get weapons, and the only place to get them is from the state, so they have to go after police officers to get a weapon. Criminals also want to go after police officers to get a weapon. So it's just been an unmitigated disaster.
It has, from start to finish. And this is, so there's a dissident. He used to be an English teacher, and now he's in exile in Ecuador because he's spoken out against the government. His name is Javier Venegas. And he says, quote, if guns had been a stronger part of our culture, if there had been a sense of duty for one to protect their individual rights and as a show of force against a government power, and had legal carry been a common thing, it would have made a huge difference. Those are all the arguments that Second Amendment supporters here in the United States talk about. When the left demonizes, quote unquote, gun culture, we say, that's a good thing. It's necessary because if you're not comfortable with firearms, if you're not already law-abiding and educated and competent with a firearm, then if you're confronted with a government force, a tyrannical force, you're not going to know what to do unless it's already part of your culture.